Hey everyone, welcome back to my therapy lounge. My name is Joanna. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and today is episode 11 of Walks with Lily, where I walk my dog and we talk about anything mental health. Today, Lily's not going to be joining us because I am traveling and I am in the captivating city of Vienna, Austria. And right now, I'm actually in the Schönbrunn Palace Gardens. Apologies if I butchered that name or that pronunciation. And behind me is the Gloriette. And if I turn around this way, that is actually the palace. So we're gonna make our way down there. And since we're in Vienna, what more appropriate topic to discuss than Sigmund Freud's id, ego, and superego. So have you ever been in a situation where you feel torn between saying what's on your mind or biting your tongue just to keep the peace? Or maybe you really wanted to text your ex, but another part of you was saying, no, don't do it. That inner conflict isn't just random. It's because of three psychological forces that was described by Sigmund Freud. So today we're breaking down Freud's model of the mind, the id, ego, and superego. We're going to talk about how it impacts our relationships as well as our day-to-day life. So let's get into it. So let's start out with the man behind the theory. Who is Sigmund Freud? Well, Freud was an Austrian neurologist who is the founder of psychoanalysis, which is a method for treating mental illness and understanding human behavior. In the early 1900s, Freud proposed that our minds are divided into three parts that constantly battle for control. He called this the psychic apparatus, and it's still used today to explain why we sometimes act on impulse, wrestle with guilt, or try to find balance in our decisions. So, what exactly are these three forces? Let's start out with the first one, the most primal one, which is the id. So, the id is the wild, impulsive, pleasure seeking part of your mind. Freud described the id as the primitive, instinctual part of our psyche that operates on the pleasure principle. It wants what it wants, and it wants it now. The id is all about basic needs and desires, so hunger, thirst, physical intimacy, and instant gratification. It doesn't care about consequences, morals, or social norms. So think of it like a toddler throwing a tantrum for a piece of candy. The id is the voice in your head that says, yes, buy those shoes now, skip work, eat that whole cake. So have you ever stayed up late watching videos or scrolling, and when you know you feel guilty about it, that's your id taking over? But if we only listen to our id, we'd probably be fired, broke, and exhausted. So that's where the ego comes in. The ego is the rational decision-making part of your brain. It operates on the reality principle, meaning that it tries to satisfy the id's desires in a realistic and socially acceptable way. So Freud compared the ego to a referee between the id's wild demands and the superego's strict rules. So it's your ability to exercise temperance and restraint. So instead of saying, I want these shoes now, your ego comes in and says, yes, you can have these shoes, but let's wait till they go on sale. Your id can also tell you things like, hey, let's book that luxury resort hotel. And the superego will come in and say, whoa, that's way too expensive. No, you need to save your money. The ego comes in as the compromise and says, well, okay, let's book this trip, but let's see if we can find a reasonable Airbnb instead. And so that leads us to the superego. The superego is the moral compass of your mind. It's shaped by societal rules, parental expectations, and personal values. Freud believed that the superego is developed during childhood because this is the time where we're learning all about rights and wrongs. It's the part of you that feels bad about binge watching a bunch of Netflix episodes instead of studying, or not calling your parents enough. That nagging guilt, that's your superego saying you should be productive. But if the ego is too dominant, then it can lead to excessive, inappropriate feelings of guilt or perfectionism. So a healthy ego balances the id's impulses and the superego's demands. All right, so we made it all the way down the hill. I don't know if you could see it, but we are at the Neptune fountain. It's very beautiful. And then we'll make our way toward the palace, which is there behind me. All right. So what are some real life examples of this trio in action? So first example is social media drama. So let's say you're scrolling, you're on X, TikTok, and you see something that kind of triggers you. And your id is the one that says, oh, I'm going to clap back, or I'm going to tell this person off. They deserve it, what have you. Super ego comes in way restrictive and says, oh, just let it slide, be the bigger person. The ego comes in to balance that out and says, why don't we just vent to a friend? Right? No receipts, no regrets. Second example is the late night text. So let's say you're thinking about your ex or somebody else that's on your mind, and the id is the one that's going to tell you, well, why don't we just text them, hey, you up? Or, hey, what's up? What's going on? I mean, we've been thinking about them all week, right? Your superego comes in like, absolutely not. Have some self-respect. You know what happened the last time you did that. So then the ego, again, comes in with compromise and balance and tells you, you know what, whatever I want to say to this person or whatever feelings I have about this person, let me just write it in my notes app and then I'll look it over tomorrow. And how many times have you done that where you want to make an impulsive decision, right? You think you want to do something and you wake up the next morning, you're like, actually, I'm really glad that didn't happen, right? So in that texting example, most likely you wake up the next morning, you read what you wrote, and you're like, phew, thank goodness I did not send that, right? So I would definitely encourage you, if you're thinking of doing anything late at night, sleep on it and revisit it in the morning. And last example is workplace temptation. So let's say you're tempted to take credit for a coworker's idea. Your id is the one that tells you, oh, it doesn't matter. You want this promotion, like you got to be on top. Superego comes in and says, no way, that's totally dishonest. Karma is real, right? Your ego comes in and says, look, let's be honest, give credit where credit is due, right? Or share the win. And that will be better for us in the long term. All right, so we made our way to the Roman ruins in the Schönbrunn Gardens, and we're going to walk back to that center square area where we were at before. But continuing on, when we practice taking a balanced approach, meaning listening to our ego, we make choices that align with our values and that we can live with. But when the id or superego dominates, that's when we wake up to embarrassing texts or miss out on opportunities. So, too much id, we make reckless moves. Too much superego, we get people pleasing burnout. So, a healthy ego negotiates between them like a skilled diplomat in your mind. Freud believed that anxiety can occur when these parts are out of sync, meaning when we're ego dystonic. So we're doing things or making choices that are out of alignment with our values, and that we are more satisfied and fulfilled in our lives when we're ego syntonic, meaning we're doing things or making choices that are in alignment with our values. So the next time you're torn between what you want to do, what you should do, and what you end up doing, don't worry about it. That's just your id, superego, and ego doing its thing. So by understanding these concepts, you're able to make better decisions, reduce feelings of guilt, and overall feel more satisfied in your day-to-day life. Alrighty, everyone. So let me know in the comments down below, what was your last id versus superego battle? And if you are looking for free resources on how to deal with anxiety, how to manage intrusive thoughts, and how to deal with toxic people, go to mytherapylounge.com/shop. And if you made it all the way to the end of this video, I want to take a moment to thank you for all your likes and comments. All right, everyone, take care, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.